A wealthy CEO's public betrayal of his pregnant wife leads to 3 years of separation, only to be reunited by their daughter's life-threatening heart condition. Before we begin, write in the comments where you are watching from and don't forget to subscribe. The chandelier's crystals scattered gold light across the Metropolitan Museum's Grand Hall as New York's elite gathered for the annual Children's Hospital fundraiser. Sarah Anderson's emerald dress caught the light as she navigated through clusters of tuxedos and designer gowns, searching for her husband. 3 separate pregnancy tests sat in her purse, each bearing the same life-changing result. She'd planned this moment carefully. Surprising Ryan with the news at an event dedicated to children seemed perfect. Her hand brushed against her clutch, feeling the weight of those little plastic sticks that would change everything. She spotted him near the Greco-Roman sculptures, his commanding presence drawing people like moths to flame. At 35, Ryan Anderson had already built Anderson Technologies into a billion-dollar empire. Tonight was meant to announce their largest charitable donation yet. But something was wrong. Victoria Carter stood too close to him, her red dress a slash of color against his black tuxedo. Sarah's steps faltered as she watched Victoria's hand slide possessively along Ryan's arm. The gesture was intimate, practiced, familiar. "Ryan?" Her voice came out smaller than intended. He turned and Sarah's world tilted on its axis. There was no warmth in those steel-gray eyes, only cold fury. "How dare you show up here?" His voice carried across the marble floor, silencing nearby conversations. "I specifically told you to stay home." Sarah's fingers tightened around her champagne glass. "I thought, the hospital donation." "You thought wrong?" Ryan's jaw clenched. "You're embarrassing me in front of everyone who matters." Victoria's lipstick smile curved upward. "Ryan darling, perhaps we should handle this privately?" "No." Ryan's voice cut through the growing silence. "I'm done pretending. Our marriage is over, Sarah. Victoria understands me, supports my vision. You've been holding me back since the day we met." The champagne glass slipped from Sarah's numb fingers, shattering against the floor. The sound echoed through the hall like a gunshot. 300 of New York's most influential people watched as her marriage crumbled in real time. "I see." Sarah's voice remained steady, even as her world collapsed. "Then I won't hold you back any longer." She turned, spine straight, head high. Her heels clicked against marble, each step measured despite her burning eyes. Behind her, Victoria's throaty laugh mingled with renewed conversation, society already moving on from her humiliation. The spring night air hit her face as she pushed through the heavy bronze doors. Only then did she allow herself to break. Tears blurred the city lights as she fumbled for her car keys, her other hand pressing against her still flat stomach. The pregnancy tests spilled from her purse onto the leather seat. Sarah stared at them, these harbingers of joy turned to ash in her mouth. "It's just you and me now, little one," she whispered, her voice breaking. "And I promise you'll never know what it feels like to be unwanted." That night, Sarah Anderson disappeared from Manhattan's social circles. She left behind her Park Avenue apartment, her position at the Anderson Foundation, and a husband who would spend 3 years building his empire while remaining ignorant of his greatest treasure and his greatest mistake. The next morning's society pages would document the Anderson Technologies' record-breaking donation to Children's Hospital. They would praise Ryan Anderson's philanthropy and note his striking companion, Victoria Carter. None would mention the broken glass on the marble floor, or the woman who walked away carrying a secret that would eventually shatter Ryan's carefully constructed world. The "For Rent" sign in the window of the Portland walk-up apartment was faded, much like Sarah's designer clothes that she'd sold to afford the security deposit. 3 months had passed since that night at the Met, and her new life was nothing like the one she'd left behind. She stood in the empty living room, one hand resting on her growing belly. A second-hand mattress on the floor and a folding chair were her only furniture. The room's peeling wallpaper and scuffed hardwood floors were a far cry from her Park Avenue home, but here she was free from the whispers, the pitying glances and Ryan's cold dismissal. "Ms. Anderson?" The principal's voice echoed in her memory from that morning's interview. "Your references from the Anderson Foundation are impressive, but why would you want to teach at our public school?" Sarah had smiled, her hand instinctively covering her slight bump. "Because every child deserves a chance to learn, regardless of their circumstances." She got the job. The salary was barely enough to cover rent and basic necessities, but it was a start. Each morning she taught literature to high school students, and each evening she talked to her unborn child about their new life. The pregnancy progressed, marked by doctors' visits she attended alone. "Everything looks healthy," Dr. Martinez had said during her last checkup. But there's something in the ultrasound? She'd scheduled more tests, her frown deepening. Sarah worked until her 8th month, saving every penny. Her students noticed her growing belly, but she deflected their questions with gentle smiles. In her classroom, discussing poetry and dreams, she could almost forget the weight of her secrets. The labor came early on a stormy October night. Alone in the delivery room, Sarah gripped the rails of the hospital bed, each contraction a reminder of how far she'd come from that night at the Met. "Push, Ms. Anderson." The nurses encouraged her, but all Sarah could hear was Ryan's voice. "You've been holding me back since the day we met." Emma came into the world silent. Too silent. "Something's wrong with her heart," Dr. Martinez explained hours later. "Congenital heart disease. She'll need specialized care, possibly surgery as she grows." Sarah held her tiny daughter, watching her struggle for each breath. Emma's medical bills would dwarf her teacher's salary. The irony wasn't lost on her. Ryan's last public act in her life had been a donation to children's healthcare, and now their daughter would need every advantage modern medicine could provide. That night, as Emma slept in the NICU, Sarah considered calling Ryan. His wealth could give Emma the care she needed. But then she remembered Victoria's laugh, the shattered champagne glass, the cruel words in front of New York's elite. No. Her daughter would never know that kind of rejection. "Your mother was asking about trust fund paperwork," the hospital administrator mentioned during discharge. Sarah's hands trembled as she signed the forms with her maiden name. Better to struggle than to let Ryan's money come with his power to hurt them both. In her tiny apartment, Sarah created a nursery in the corner of her bedroom. A second-hand crib, carefully sanitized. Hand-me-down clothes from co-workers. Each item represented hours of overtime tutoring struggling students. Emma's first months were a blur of midnight feedings, doctor's appointments, and endless worry. Sarah learned to track her daughter's breathing, to notice the slightest bluish tint to her lips. She became an expert in pediatric cardiology terminology, fighting insurance companies between classes. "You're doing an amazing job," Dr. Martinez assured her during Emma's 6-month checkup. "But her condition will require ongoing care. Have you considered reaching out to the father?" Sarah watched Emma sleeping in her carrier, tiny chest rising and falling with effort. "There is no father," she replied firmly. "It's just us." That night, Sarah saw Ryan on the news, announcing Anderson Technologies' expansion. Victoria stood beside him, an engagement ring glittering on her finger. Sarah turned off the TV and held Emma close, listening to her daughter's struggling heartbeat. "We'll make it, little one," she whispered, rocking gently in the second-hand chair. "I promise you'll never need him. I promise you'll never feel unwanted." But promises, like hearts, sometimes break despite our best intentions. The abandoned warehouse on Portland's east side loomed before Sarah, its broken windows reflecting the morning sun. 2 years of savings from her teaching job had bought this space, a far cry from the gleaming towers of Anderson Technologies, but it was hers. "Mama, look." 3-year-old Emma pressed her small hand against the dusty window, her breath fogging the glass. Despite her heart condition, she vibrated with excitement. "My school?" "Our school," Sarah corrected, squeezing her daughter's hand. The property had been cheap for a reason. No developer wanted a building with collapsed ceiling sections and ancient plumbing. But Sarah saw potential in the high ceilings and open spaces. The local community rallied around her vision. Rodriguez, a retired contractor, volunteered to oversee renovations. "My grandkids need a good school," he said, examining the electrical system. "The public schools here are overcrowded and private ones?" He shrugged, the gesture saying everything about affordability. Weekends became a symphony of hammers and saws. Parents from Sarah's old school brought their skills: plumbing, carpentry, painting. Emma watched from her small chair, clutching her stuffed bear, her lips occasionally taking on that worrying bluish tint that made Sarah's heart race. "You're creating something special here," Dr. Martinez observed during Emma's quarterly checkup. But her heart. The doctor's frown deepened as she studied the latest test results. "The medication isn't working as well as it should. We need to consider additional options." Sarah pushed the worry aside, focusing on the school. Each painted wall, each repaired window represented hope. She called it the Little Dream Academy, though local papers dubbed it the Warehouse School. The name stuck. Opening day arrived with September's crisp air. 15 students, all from families who couldn't afford traditional private education. Sarah had structured the tuition on a sliding scale with scholarships available. It meant operating on razor-thin margins, but watching Emma lead her new classmates through the bright halls made everything worth it. Ms. Anderson. Teresa, a single mother of 3, hugged her after the first parent meeting. My Miguel is reading entire books now. He never. She wiped away tears. We never thought we could afford a school like this. The school grew, word spreading through Portland's working-class communities. Sarah hired 2 more teachers, former colleagues who shared her vision. The warehouse transformed. Art covered the walls, laughter echoed through renovated classrooms, and children thrived. But as the school flourished, Emma wilted. Mama? Emma's voice was weak one morning as Sarah prepared for classes. My heart feels funny. The rush to the emergency room was a blur. Dr. Martinez's words cut through the beeping monitors. Her condition is progressing faster than we anticipated. The medications aren't enough anymore. She needs surgery, Sarah. Specialized surgery. Sarah stared at the estimated costs, numbers that dwarfed her school's entire operating budget. Even liquidating everything she owned wouldn't cover half. The irony was bitter. Her ex-husband's billions sat in New York while their daughter's heart failed in Portland. There are other options, Dr. Martinez suggested gently. Children's hospitals often have programs, or perhaps Emma's father. No. Sarah's voice was firm even as her hands trembled. I'll find another way. She threw herself into fundraising, organizing events between classes. The community responded with bake sales, car washes, and donated items for auction. But watching Emma struggle to climb the school stairs, her face pale and drawn, Sarah knew they were running out of time. One evening, as she sorted through medical bills at her desk, Emma curled up in her lap with a storybook. Read to me, Mama? Sarah held her daughter close, feeling the irregular flutter of her heart. The book was The Velveteen Rabbit, Emma's favorite tale of love making things real. As she read, Sarah's voice caught on the words about becoming real through love, even when it hurts. Emma fell asleep in her arms, her breathing labored. The setting sun painted the warehouse windows gold, illuminating the dream they'd built together. On her desk, medical reports sat next to school attendance sheets, 2 dreams colliding. Sarah kissed her daughter's forehead, a decision crystallizing. Sometimes love meant facing your greatest fears. Sometimes it meant swallowing your pride. And sometimes it meant picking up the phone and dialing a number you'd sworn never to call again. Mr. Anderson? This is Portland Memorial Hospital. We need to discuss your daughter's emergency heart surgery. Ryan's coffee cup shattered against his office floor. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Anderson Technologies, Manhattan's skyline blurred as the words echoed in his head. There must be a mistake, he said, his voice tight. I don't have a daughter. Sir, we have your name on the birth certificate. Emma Anderson, age 3. Her mother is Sarah Anderson. Sarah. The name hit him like a physical blow. You've been holding me back since the day we met. His own words from that night at the Met haunted him as his private jet crossed the continent. 3 years. He had a 3-year-old daughter. The mathematics of betrayal were simple, devastating. Portland Memorial's waiting room was a far cry from the luxury hospitals he frequented in Manhattan. Ryan stormed through the doors, his expensive suit out of place among worn jeans and tired faces. Then he saw her. Sarah sat alone, her head bowed, fingers twisting a paper cup. She looked smaller than he remembered, but her spine straightened as she sensed his presence. When she raised her eyes to meet his, there was no trace of the woman who had fled New York. How dare you keep this from me? His voice shook with rage. How dare I? Sarah's laugh was bitter. You made your choice that night, Ryan. You chose Victoria. You chose your empire. You chose to humiliate me in front of everyone who mattered to you. I had a right to know about my child. Like I had a right to know about Victoria? Sarah stood, her voice low but fierce. How long were you sleeping with her before that night? 2 months? 6. While I was trying to get pregnant, were you already planning to replace me? The question hit a nerve. He remembered another night, Sarah crying over another negative pregnancy test, while Victoria's messages lit up his phone. The shame of it mixed with his anger. Where is she? I want to see my daughter. She's in surgery prep. Sarah's voice cracked. Her heart? She needs specialized surgery. The kind only money can buy. Her eyes met his, challenging. That's why I called. Not for me. For Emma. A nurse approached with paperwork, medical history forms, consent documents, insurance details. The clinical reality of his daughter's condition lay bare in black and white. Why didn't you come to me sooner? He asked, signing where indicated. I would have. Would have what? Sarah's voice was tired. Thrown money at us? Added us to your list of charitable causes? Our daughter isn't a tax write-off, Ryan. Our daughter. The word struck him with physical force. Memories flooded back. Sarah's joy at every negative pregnancy test turning to disappointment, her determination to keep trying, his growing impatience. Had she known that night? Had she tried to tell him? Mr. and Mrs. Anderson? A doctor appeared, tablet in hand. We need to discuss Emma's procedure. Ms. Sarah corrected automatically. We're not. I want the best, Ryan interrupted. Whatever she needs. I'll have my team contact the top pediatric cardiac surgeons. She has the best, Sarah cut in. Dr. Martinez has been treating Emma since birth. She knows her case, her history. This isn't about your connections or your need to control everything. Their eyes locked, years of unspoken words passing between them. In the harsh hospital lighting, Ryan saw the toll of 3 years of silence. The worry lines around Sarah's eyes, the tension in her shoulders. What had it cost her to make that call? She has your eyes. Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. Every time she looks at me, I see you. Even after everything, she's half you, Ryan. And she's dying. The words hung between them like shattered glass on marble floors. Mama says you're my daddy. Ryan froze in the doorway of the pediatric room. The small voice came from a tiny figure in the hospital bed, surrounded by beeping monitors and 4 tubes. Emma's dark hair framed a face that was unmistakably his own at that age, but her eyes, those were all Sarah's. Is that why you're wearing a suit? Mama says only fancy people wear suits on normal days. He approached the bed cautiously as if she might disappear. Yes, I am your daddy. Oh. Emma considered this, fiddling with her worn stuffed bear. Do you know how to read stories? Mama always does the voices. From her corner chair, Sarah watched silently as Ryan Anderson, terror of Wall Street, awkwardly perched on the edge of a hospital bed with a copy of The Velveteen Rabbit. What does real mean? He read, his voice softening with each word. It means when you love something so much, Emma explained seriously, that nothing else matters. Like how Mama loves me in the school. The school? The dream school. Mama built it for kids who need extra love. Emma's face lit up. You should visit. We have art on all the walls and Ms. Rodriguez makes the best cookies and... Her excitement triggered a coughing fit. Ryan's hands hovered helplessly as Sarah moved to adjust Emma's oxygen. Tell me more about your school, Ryan said once Emma settled, desperate to keep that smile on her face. Over the next hour, Emma's stories tumbled out about her friends, her favorite reading corner, the mural she helped paint. Each tale revealed the world Sarah had built, so different from the glittering emptiness of his Manhattan life. Are you married to Victoria? Emma asked suddenly. I heard Mama talking about her on the phone. Ryan's chest tightened. No, I'm not. Good. Emma nodded decisively. Because she made Mama cry at the party. That wasn't nice. The simple judgment in a child's voice cut deeper than any boardroom criticism. No, Ryan agreed softly. It wasn't nice at all. Emma fell asleep mid-story, her small hand wrapped around his finger. Ryan stared at their joined hands, marveling at how something so tiny could feel so monumental. She has your smile, Sarah said quietly. The real one, not your press conference smile. I've been smiling wrong for a long time, haven't I? Ryan's voice was rough. He carefully extracted his hand from Emma's grip. The school, you did that alone? The community helped. People who believe education shouldn't depend on bank accounts? Sarah's chin lifted slightly. Not everyone measures success in stock prices. Ryan looked around the hospital room, taking in Emma's drawings on the walls, the well-loved stuffed animals, the stack of books. Evidence of a life filled with love rather than luxury. What had he built in the past 3 years that mattered half as much? I have a board meeting tomorrow, he said. Announcing our quarterly earnings. Of course. Sarah's voice was neutral. Emma's surgery is scheduled for? I'm not going. Ryan pulled out his phone. Patricia? Cancel everything. Yes, everything. The board can wait. My daughter can't. Emma stirred in her sleep, mumbling something about rabbits and dreams. Ryan reached out to smooth her hair, the gesture awkward but gentle. They made me real, he quoted softly from the book. When you are real, you don't mind being hurt. Sarah's sharp intake of breath made him look up. For a moment, they were back at the Met, surrounded by shattered glass and broken promises. But this time, Ryan was the one being transformed by love. I'd like to see the school, he said. If that's all right. Victoria Carter's Louboutins clicked against Portland Memorial's linoleum floors like a countdown. She clutched her iPad, open to the Wall Street Journal's headline, Anderson Technology CEO's secret child. Corporate scandal or family drama? She found Ryan in Emma's hospital room, reading a children's book. The sight stopped her cold. 3 years of carefully orchestrated plans threatened by a sick child and her schoolteacher mother. The boards called an emergency meeting, Victoria announced. Your little situation has knocked our stock down 12 points? Ryan didn't look up from the book. Emma, sweetheart, I need to talk to Ms. Carter. I'll finish the story later. Promise? Emma's voice was small, tired from pre-surgery tests. Promise? He kissed her forehead, a gesture that made Victoria's perfectly painted smile crack. In the hallway, Victoria thrust the iPad at him. Every major business publication is running the story. Billionaire abandons sick child? Anderson Technologies, built on family values? She lowered her voice. We can spin this. Say Sarah hid the pregnancy, demanded money. Paint her as a gold digger. No. Ryan's voice was steel. You're not touching them. Think about the company. Everything we built? Everything I built, Ryan corrected. While you played the devoted partner, leaking boardroom secrets to our competitors, Victoria's face whitened. I don't know what you're talking about. The Thompson merger? The sudden short selling before our earnings report? Ryan's smile was cold. I've known for months. I just didn't care enough to confront you. But now? He glanced at Emma's room. Now I care about what's real. Real? Victoria laughed. A shabby schoolteacher and her sick brat are real? I made you Ryan. I knew which reporters to court, which rivals to undermine. Without me? Without you, I might have been there when my daughter was born. The words came out raw. I might have heard her first word, seen her first steps. Instead, I was building an empire of glass and shadows. Victoria's composure cracked. You're throwing everything away for them? The board will never. The board just received my email. I'm stepping down as CEO. Ryan's voice was calm. I'm establishing a charitable foundation focused on children's healthcare and education. Starting with full funding for the Little Dream Academy. You can't. I already did. Ryan turned back toward Emma's room. Sarah was right about you, about all of it. I just couldn't see it through my own ambition. I'll destroy you, Victoria hissed. Every tabloid, every business paper will report that Ryan Anderson chose his family over his fortune. He smiled, genuine for the first time in years. Feel free to add that the experience made him realize what truly matters. The Ryan I knew would never. The Ryan you knew died the moment he met his daughter. He opened Emma's door. Goodbye, Victoria. Inside, Emma was attempting to teach Sarah a hand-clapping game. Their laughter, though tired, filled the room with something Victoria had never understood: joy. Everything okay, Daddy? Emma asked. Ryan sat beside her bed, taking her small hand in his. Everything's perfect, sweetheart. Now, where were we in that story? Behind him, Victoria's heels clicked away, fading like the last echoes of his old life. It's time, Dr. Martinez announced, entering Emma's hospital room at dawn. We need to prep her for surgery now. Emma looked tiny in the hospital bed, clutching her stuffed bear. Can Bear come with me? Bear needs to stay with Mommy and Daddy, Dr. Martinez explained gently. He'll help them be brave while you're being brave in surgery. Ryan watched as Sarah helped Emma change into a surgical gown, her practiced movements revealing 3 years of hospital visits he'd missed. When had his daughter learned to be so brave? When had Sarah learned to hide her fear so well? Remember what we practiced? Sarah's voice was steady as she kissed Emma's forehead. Count backward from 10. And when I wake up, my heart will be all better, Emma finished. Her small hand reached for Ryan. Daddy, you'll stay with Mama? The simple request cracked something in his chest. I promise, Princess. We'll both be here when you wake up. They watched as the surgical team wheeled Emma away, her bear clutched in Sarah's arms. The corridor seemed to stretch endlessly, their daughter becoming smaller and smaller until the doors swung shut. The waiting room clock ticked mercilessly. 8 hours of surgery ahead. Ryan paced while Sarah sat motionless, her fingers working the worn fur of Emma's bear. She was 2 days old when they diagnosed her heart condition, Sarah said suddenly. I was still in the hospital bed when Dr. Martinez explained everything. All I could think was how much you would have hated the public hospital sheets. Ryan stopped pacing. I would have moved heaven and earth if I'd known. Would you? Sarah's laugh was hollow. The Ryan I knew moved heaven and earth for stock prices and Victoria's smile. I'm not that Ryan anymore. No. Sarah looked at him properly for the first time. You're not. Emma has that effect on people. She makes them better just by loving them. Hour 3. The surgery updates came regularly. Bypass initiated. Initial repair proceeding. Each message a reminder that their daughter's heart, so full of love, needed mechanical help to keep beating. Remember when we first met? Ryan asked, breaking another silence. That charity auction where you outbid me for that horrible modern art piece? It wasn't horrible, Sarah protested, a ghost of a smile touching her lips. It was expressive. It was a blue dot on a white canvas. Ryan sat beside her. But you were so passionate about supporting the artist. That's when I knew I loved you. Sarah's hands tightened on the bear. What happened to us, Ryan? I forgot what mattered. Success, power, image, they became more important than love. He stared at his reflection in the window. I became my father. Hour 5 brought the first complication. Dr. Martinez emerged, still in surgical gear. We've encountered some unexpected bleeding. We need consent for additional procedures. They signed the forms together, hands shaking. As the doctor left, Sarah broke. Ryan caught her as she crumpled, holding her as she sobbed against his chest. His own tears fell into her hair. She has to be okay, Sarah whispered. She's all I have. She has both of us now, Ryan promised. Whatever happens, you're not alone anymore. Hour 7. The bleeding was controlled, but Emma's heart struggled to restart on its own. They clung to each other, two people who had once promised to love each other forever, united now by a deeper love, the love for their daughter. I'm sorry, Ryan whispered. For that night at the Met. For Victoria. For not being the man you deserved. Sarah looked up at him, her face tear-stained. I'm sorry too. For not telling you about Emma. For letting fear and pride keep you from your daughter. The surgery door opened. Dr. Martinez emerged, removing her mask. Time stopped as they waited for her words. Her smile broke the tension. She's asking for her bear. The old warehouse looked different in the morning light. Ryan stood across the street, watching parents drop their children off at the Little Dream Academy. No luxury cars or uniformed drivers. Just parents rushing to work, calling out last-minute reminders about homework and lunch boxes. His driver shifted uncomfortably in the sedan behind him. Sir? The foundation paperwork needs your signature. In a minute, James. Ryan watched a mother hug her child goodbye. 3 weeks had passed since Emma's surgery, and these morning visits had become his ritual, though Sarah didn't know. Inside his briefcase lay the solution to the school's financial struggles. A grant proposal from the newly formed Anderson Foundation for Education. He'd spent nights in Emma's hospital room drafting it, learning about operating costs, teacher salaries, and building codes. The school's front door opened, and Sarah emerged to greet the arriving children. She looked tired but happy, calling each child by name. She'd refused to take time off after Emma's surgery, insisting the school needed her. Mr. Anderson? A small voice interrupted his thoughts. A boy, maybe 7, stood before him. You're Emma's dad, right? She told us about you. Ryan knelt to the boy's level. I am. And you are? Miguel. Ms. Anderson helped my mom get a scholarship for me to come here. He grinned, showing a missing front tooth. Are you gonna help fix the roof? It leaks when it rains. Before Ryan could answer, Sarah spotted them. Her expression shifted from surprise to wariness as she approached. Miguel, honey, go on inside. Class is starting. She waited until the boy was gone before addressing Ryan. Why are you here? I had my team assess the building. Ryan held out the folder. The roof needs complete replacement. The electrical system isn't up to code. The heating? We manage, Sarah cut him off. We don't need your money. The children need a safe building. Ryan's voice was gentle. Emma told me how you use trash bins to catch the leaks. How you run space heaters in winter because the furnace is failing. We make do. These families trust us. To keep their children safe, Ryan finished. Sarah, please. Let me help. Not as Emma's father or your ex-husband. As someone who finally understands what you're building here. Sarah took the folder reluctantly. Her eyes widened as she read. Ryan, this is too much. It's not charity. It's an investment in what matters. He gestured at the children filing into the building. Every child here deserves the same chance as Emma has. The foundation will provide ongoing support, overseen by an independent board. No strings, no control. Just resources to help you expand your vision. Sarah's hands trembled on the papers. Why? Because you were right. All those years ago, when you said education shouldn't depend on bank accounts, Ryan smiled sadly. I was too busy counting dollars to count what matters. But Emma, she taught me to see value differently. A crash from inside the school interrupted them. Sarah instinctively moved toward the sound, but Ryan was faster. They found a broken bookshelf in the library, books scattered across the floor. The ancient shelving had finally given way. Without a word, Ryan removed his suit jacket and began picking up books. Sarah watched him for a moment before joining him. "The children need new shelves," she admitted. "And books. And computers. Then they'll have them." Ryan examined a worn copy of The Velveteen Rabbit. "Emma says this is the most popular story here. They all want to believe in becoming real through love." Sarah's voice softened. "Like Emma did for you?" Ryan placed the book carefully on a stable shelf. "Like you did with this school. You made dreams real for these children, Sarah. Let me help you build more." Outside, the morning sun caught the warehouse's broken windows, turning them to gold. Inside, among scattered books and broken shelves, two people who had lost their way began to build a new kind of bridge. "Daddy, you're doing it wrong?" Emma's laughter echoed through the school's new library. "You have to do the voices for each character." Ryan adjusted his reading glasses, surrounded by a circle of enthralled kindergartners. 2 months after her surgery, Emma was back at school, her color better than ever. The new medication was working, and her weekly checkups brought only good news. From the doorway, Sarah watched as Ryan gamely attempted different voices for each of the three bears. He'd been reading to the children every Friday afternoon since the renovation was completed. The CEO who once commanded boardrooms now sat cross-legged on a reading rug, completely at ease. "Ms. Anderson?" Miguel tugged at her sleeve. "Is Emma's daddy going to stay forever? He makes the best voices." The question caught her off guard. She'd been asking herself the same thing, watching Ryan transform from the man who shattered her world into someone new. Someone who brought coffee for her teachers every morning, who knew every student's name, who spent his lunch breaks helping with math homework. "Time for recess," Sarah announced, saving herself from answering. The children filed out, leaving Emma perched on Ryan's lap, helping him shelve books. "Mama, can Daddy come to the park with us today?" Emma asked. "He's never seen the ducks." Their daughter had been orchestrating these moments with increasing frequency: ice cream after doctor's appointments, weekend trips to the museum, impromptu picnics in the park. Each time, Sarah found it harder to remember why she should say no. "The ducks can't wait." Ryan played along, but his eyes met Sarah's, leaving the choice to her. The park was quiet for a Friday afternoon. Emma ran ahead to the pond, while her parents walked in comfortable silence. So different from that night at the Met, when silence meant betrayal and broken dreams. "The foundation board approved the expansion plans," Ryan said finally. 3 more schools in low-income areas by next year." Sarah nodded. She'd seen the blueprints, watched him work late into the night to make her dream bigger than she'd ever imagined. "The parents can't believe it. Some of them cry when we tell them their children have places." "You did that," Ryan corrected. "I'm just the checkbook." "No." Sarah stopped walking. "You're more than that now. The children adore you. The parents trust you." Emma made me better," Ryan finished. "She taught me what you tried to all those years ago, that real wealth isn't in bank accounts." They watched their daughter toss bread to the ducks, her laughter carrying across the water. The late afternoon sun caught her dark hair, so like Ryan's, while her smile was all Sarah's. "I've been angry for so long," Sarah admitted. "Even after you changed, even after everything you've done for the school, for Emma. I held on to that anger because it was safer than forgiveness." Ryan was quiet for a moment. "I didn't deserve forgiveness. What I did that night, choosing Victoria, my pride. I broke more than just our marriage. But you're not that man anymore." Sarah's voice was soft. "Emma knows it. I know it too. Sarah." Ryan turned to face her, his eyes full of an emotion she hadn't let herself see. "I know I can't undo the past. But maybe we could build a new future? Not for us but for Emma. For all the children who need us." "Mama. Daddy. Look." Emma called out. She stood at the water's edge, pointing at a family of ducks, mother, father, and baby swimming in perfect formation. Sarah felt Ryan's hand brush against hers, tentative, asking permission. She looked at their daughter, so full of joy and trust, then back at the man who had learned to become worthy of that trust. Slowly she laced her fingers through his. "For Emma," she agreed. "And maybe for us too." The setting sun painted the pond in shades of gold, while a little girl watched her parents find their way back to each other, one small moment at a time. 6 months after Emma's surgery, the Anderson Foundation for Education opened its new headquarters in downtown Portland. The sleek building stood in stark contrast to the old warehouse school, but the children's artwork adorning its walls told a different story. "And this is where Daddy helps other schools become like ours," Emma explained proudly, leading her class on a tour. Her cheeks were rosy, no more bluish tints, no more struggling for breath. Dr. Martinez had called her recovery remarkable, though Sarah suspected love had played as big a role as medicine. Ryan watched from his office doorway as Emma showed off the wall of dreams, photographs of schools across the country that the foundation was helping. No more Manhattan penthouse office. No more boardroom battles. His new workplace had beanbag chairs in the corners and children's laughter in the hallways. The Seattle project got approved, Sarah announced, appearing beside him with 2 coffee cups. She handed him one. She knew his order by heart now. "That's 5 new schools next year. Thanks to you." Ryan took the coffee, their fingers brushing. These small touches had become more frequent, less accidental. "The board loves your curriculum design." "Who would have thought?" Sarah smiled. "The corporate raider and the schoolteacher, revolutionizing education together. I prefer to think of it as the dreamer teaching the pragmatist how to believe in magic." Ryan's voice softened as they watched Emma demonstrate the correct way to use the drinking fountain to her giggling classmates. The tour ended in the building's rooftop garden, where the children planted vegetables for the school's lunch program. As her classmates dispersed to explore the plants, Emma tugged both her parents toward the corner where she'd planted strawberries. "Look." She pointed proudly at the tiny green fruit forming. "They're growing just like my heart got stronger." Sarah felt Ryan's hand find hers, warm and steady. These moments still surprised her, not because they felt wrong but because they felt so right. The anger that had sustained her for 3 years had melted away, replaced by something softer, stronger. "Ms. Anderson?" Miguel appeared, clutching a permission slip. "Mom wants to know if it's okay if I stay late for the new art program?" Sarah reached for the form, but Ryan was faster. "I'll walk you through it, buddy. Let's find Ms. Rodriguez and get this sorted out." She watched them go, Ryan's tall frame bent to listen to Miguel's chatter about art supplies. The man who once measured worth in dollars now counted it in children's smiles and small victories. "Mama?" Emma's voice drew her attention back. "Are you and Daddy going to get married again?" The question caught Sarah off guard. "Emma, honey?" "Because Tommy's parents got unmarried and then married again after his dad learned to be nice." Emma's logic was child simple. "And Daddy learned to be nice. Plus, you smile at him like Ms. Rodriguez smiles at Mr. Chen when he brings her flowers." Before Sarah could respond, Ryan returned. "All sorted. Miguel's mother says thank you, by the way. She's got a job interview that day." He noticed their expressions. "Everything okay?" "Emma was just asking about future plans," Sarah said carefully. Ryan knelt beside their daughter. "Well, I was going to wait, but how would you feel about us all having dinner together? Not at the hospital cafeteria or the school, but at a real restaurant." Emma's eyes widened. "Like a date?" "Like a family dinner," Ryan corrected, but his eyes met Sarah's with a question in them. "If your mother agrees?" Sarah looked at her daughter's hopeful face, at the man who had learned to be worthy of second chances, at the garden growing under the Portland sky. "I think," she said slowly, "that would be perfect." Later that evening, as the sun set over the city, 3 people sat at a corner table in a small Italian restaurant. Emma told stories about her strawberry plants while her parents shared wine and memories, laughter replacing old pain. "To new beginnings," Ryan proposed, raising his glass. Sarah touched her glass to his, remembering another toast in another life. But this time, when crystal met crystal, it didn't shatter, it sang. What would you have done in Sarah's position? Would you have found the strength to forgive someone who hurt you so deeply, or would you have kept that wall around your heart? Share your thoughts in the comments below. When is forgiveness truly the right choice, and when is it better to move forward alone? If this story of love, redemption, and second chances touched your heart, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more moving narratives that explore the depths of human emotion. Your perspective matters, and we'd love to hear how this story resonated with your own experiences of forgiveness and transformation. Remember, every story has the power to change hearts and open minds. Share this with someone who might need a reminder that it's never too late for a new beginning.